Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only global podcast that looks at cycling from an aesthetic and superficial point of view. I'm your host, Alex, joined by my co-hosts, Warren and Tony. Gentlemen, how's it going this week?
I'm doing all right.
You
That's
sound
convincing. It
really
sounds all
enthusiastic
right.
about this podcast, Tony. I hope
Yeah.
it feels like an episode where Tony's going to throw a lot of stuff in the Canal. So we've had a lot of interviews. We sort of strayed a little bit from our regular segment format of the last few weeks, but this week expect a more traditional episode where we are bringing back a lot of our traditional segments, such as We Rate Your Bike for Free, a segment that we've been neglecting over the past few weeks. But also, since this is our last episode of 2021, we're going to have a bit of a 2021 wrap up where we each look at our most significant and most appreciated releases, products that we've bought, trends that we've noticed in the world of cycling. So we're going to do a bit of a 2021 wrap up from a Cycling Fashion Week angle. Jumping with the news segment, what's happening right now is the new 2022 World Tour kits are starting to trickle in slowly. We can't review them all at once because they all haven't come out, but some pretty important ones have been released so far, and I think it's our duty as the global style authorities of the cycling game to review those kits. And so I think we'll start with one that was released recently, and it's the Trek Segafredo 2022 kits. So they released both their men's and their women's kits. Trek Segafredo, you'll recall the team of Jasper Stuyven, Mads Petersen, and on the women's side, Lizzie Deignan and Elisa Longo Borghini. So they came out with their new kit. The men's kit is essentially a white jersey with their sponsors in the front. There's a red band and it says Trek on it. The bibs are black. And on the women's side, the kit is actually similar to the men's side, but the colored band on which the logo Trek is written is sort of a pale kind of sky blue type color. The kits appear to be made by Santini. What did you guys think about the Trek Segafredo kit for 2022?
I did just want to not correct you, Alex, but I think the bibs are actually like a dark navy, unless I'm blind.
I think they look like a dark navy, but who knows if it's the photo because it's a blue background, so that could be
that. So it is a little bit confusing because the background, the official photos, you're right. There's a dark blue background. The riders are on this background, and the bibs are actually darker than the background, so it makes them look black. But you're right that they might actually be kind of a very, very dark navy.
Either way, I like these kits. They're pretty clean as far as World Tour kits go. The women's kit in particular, I like the little powder white blue versus the red. Yeah, I like it. I like how Mads Petersen has a world champ band, so we can remember that he was world champ for like a month technically. The socks are terrible. They look like they were the kind of socks you make for like your local cycling club and just get the logo printed straight on. But other than that, I think the kits are nice and clean and some nice solid color blocking with the logos plastered on top.
See, I think, I mean, the socks, I don't know the quality of it, but who made it, but I think all that adds and ties in that they've done a really, a really good job beyond just that. There's a certain level of a world tour kit that has to have the sponsors, which always takes away from sort of a bit of the look of it. But they've got the kind of band, and so for the male side, the men's team, they've got the red, and then they've tied that in with the little red of the socks and the logo and the band around the bib shorts. And then the women, they've done the same thing with the kind of powder blue. So it's all the little details they've brought together. It feels very cohesive. It's a pretty nice outing for a world tour kit. It's really unfortunate that it's Trek, because Trek is bad.
So I think you guys are, you obviously give this kit a good rating. This kit, to me, by World Tour standards, that is a 10 out of 10. And I say by World Tour standards because World Tour kits, more often than not, are terrible. And this is not terrible. It's actually quite good. I love white jerseys in general, and I find that this is very well executed. I especially like the women's kit, the way the colors come together. I think it's actually very beautiful. I kind of like the sponsors on it as well. I don't know, Santini, Segafredo. It just sounds
Pirelli,
Italian.
don't forget about
It's
the
good. Yeah,
Pirelli.
Pirelli,
But Trek is a
well,
sponsor.
so that's the thing is I don't share. So Warren, especially you, and it seems like Tony, you've jumped on that bandwagon as well. You guys hate Trek, uh,
Yeah.
and it's fine. I don't hate Trek. I'm a former Trek owner. I'm actually a current Trek owner as well.
Vintage Trek though, vintage
Yeah,
Trek.
vintage. So correct. So I'm a former current Trek owner, but I'm a current vintage Trek owner as I own I believe it's the 5300 with the U.S. Postal Service paint job, which is an homage to the greatest writer and the greatest team of all time. But again, back to these kits, I think they're very good, and I think you guys missed a very important point as well. They released a training kit,
Mhm.
which is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's that sort of pink jersey with the band on which Trek is written becomes black. The bibs are black, but you guys might correct me and say that they're navy. I actually think these ones are black. So it's kind of black and pink. Love anything that's black and pink. I think that's one of the greatest color combos of all time in the history of cycling. So look, I always expect World Tour kits to be horrible, and this is actually good. And sure, you guys don't like Trek. Look, Trek has done a lot for American cycling in general. Without Trek, is there a U.S. postal team? Yeah, actually, probably they would have gotten on Specialized or whatever. But hey, Trek is a part of the fabric of American cycling. Can't hate on Trek. If you hate Trek, you hate America. That's what it is. And I love Trek.
Until Trek makes amends with Lance Armstrong, this is a 9 out of 10.
It
Yeah,
is
so
true
so
that
it's they've got to apologize to like it's the history's there with Lance, but they're not. I don't think they've treated him well since he was made the witch hunt was out for him. They didn't understand that he was just on his bike 8 hours a day. How do you think he got so good?
Yeah, we
Just
all
by
saw the
being
Nike ad.
Yeah, he was just on his bike 8 hours a day. So until Trek apologizes to Lance and says, "Listen, you may have not doped. Nobody really knows for sure." It's not clear. Everyone's got their opinion, but it's not clear. But either way, he brought them so much business. They didn't have to return any money to the people who bought the Trek bikes. So yeah, Trek needs to make amends with our boy Lance.
the other criticism of Trek that I think is valid is that they basically killed another great bicycle brand, which was Le Mans Cycling. Series of lawsuits between Le Mans and Trek, but also that was because Le Mans was criticizing the alleged at that time doping of Lance Armstrong. So anyway, the fact that they shut down the Le Mans brand, I think is you can criticize Trek for that. But anyway, back to the kits. I think this is an actual good pro tour
Yeah.
kit. So
I agree. I
kudos to
agree.
them.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
it's very good.
and they're having a little fun in their pictures too. I like the fun.
So shout out to Trek. Excellent kits. Okay, the next one we are going to talk about is the Ineos kit. So it is Ineos Grenadier. Pinarello is still their bike sponsor. So they've basically, I would say that it's simply an evolution of the existing kit that they had. So they remain in their current colors, which are black and red. However, the previous one, I would say the black was a little more prominent on the kit. There was a sort of Grenadiers logo in the front, and now what you have is a sort of fade of the red color on the shoulders. Not necessarily splatter paint, but there's a very clear fade of how the red integrates the jersey, and there's almost like an reluctant to say Argyle because Education First or whatever they were before. I think it was Team Garmin, Slipstream back in the day. They had the Argyle motif or pattern on the jersey, and now it's a little bit different. It's more like if you look, for example, at like if there's any skiers that listen to Cycling Fashion Week, the double black logo of the slopes. So this is basically what you have there, and there's a gradual fade of black to dark gray to dark red to light red all the way on along the shoulders. It's written Ineos in white, Grenadiers in white as well. So that is the new the Ineos jersey for this year's. Guys, what did you think of Ineos?
I mean, it's not Castelli, so step up. We know my feelings on the Castelli. And by that, I mean it just doesn't have the Castelli logo. But they are making their kit with a company called BioRacer, which I think sounds like an energy drink. So that's a strike against the kit, even though it has nothing to do with the design. I saw, I don't know, somebody on the internet, I can't attribute the exact joke to the correct person, said it looked like the little red straps kind of around the shoulders make it look like they're wearing backpacks, and now I can't unsee it. These guys are like, they're biking to school, they've got like their lunch money from mom, and they're hoping to, maybe finish top 5 so they won't get beat up by the bullies.
How wide are the straps on your backpack that looks like a backpack?
Pretty wide. I got broad shoulders.
Doesn't look like a backpack to me.
Or yeah, it actually does look like a backpack. And when I saw it, it made me think of, like super long distance gravel racers, like Unbound Gravel. That's right. So the people that race Unbound Gravel that have this sort of backpack that they can, sip water directly throughout it. It did look like that. And Bio Racer, I've never heard of that brand. It just sounds like they're putting in a phone call to Dr. Michele Ferrari there with the name Bio Racer. I have no idea what that is. That's a pretty uneventful release, I think, from Ineos. Didn't think that was an especially well done kit. The Ineos logo too, I just find it a little bit hideous. It's giant as well on their front on the front of the jersey.
It almost like this kid almost does more in conversation. It's bad.
Well, but I think it was pointed out to me on the internet, and I think that the promotional pictures we have on Cycling Week that I'm looking at right now aren't showing it as well. And let's give BioRacer the benefit of the doubt, but it was pointed out that the cut of it was very poor, and I did see some pictures on Instagram where the looks like the production quality of the actual jersey. Let's forget about the design and the logos and stuff. Very sort of baggy in the armpits. Which in the end, and this sort of goes to all fashion. It's not necessarily specific to cycling, but cycling is very important. The fit of your kit is more important than any other part of your kit. I don't care if you've got the nicest new Panormal release, and that kit doesn't fit you properly. You didn't buy the right size. It's too small, it's too big, or whatever. You bought the knockoff one from AliExpress, and the cut's bad. It's bad. So let's BioRacer. I've never heard of them. Let's give them credit that's just maybe a template thing they're working on, and by the time they get to races, they'll be nice and streamlined and looking good. But if they come out, maybe Tour Down Under will be Ineos' first race. We'll see with all the travel and stuff. But if they come out and it's cut like some of the pictures I've seen, BioRacer has to. I don't know, just fold up shop and head on out. We got to go back to Castelli because at least they know how to make a nice tight jersey.
All right, so the next one we're going to talk about, so these are pretty much the 3 ones that have come out so far. The next one is AG2R Citroën, the French team formerly known as AG2R La Mondiale. They came out with their new 2022 kit, and it looks suspiciously like the 2021 kit and the 2020 kit and the 2019 kit. This thing just doesn't change. Reminds me of the novel where the Italian novel that says for everything to stay the same, everything has to change. That appears to be the motto of AG2R Citroën. So basically, white jersey, diagonal lettering that says AG2R Citroën La Mondiale, Citroën in red. The other lettering, I believe, in sort of a dark brown or chocolate or maroon. There is a touch of powder blue on the left shoulder. So again, the writing on the jersey is diagonal. It sort of follows a 45-degree line towards the upper left, towards the left shoulder. The bibs continue to be brown or chocolate brown or maroon. That seems to be their signature move. It appears they will be riding a BMC bike this year. And Citroën, the French car manufacturer, is their big sponsor now, along with AG2R La Mondiale, which is an insurance company. And the kit is actually designed by a French manufacturer called Rosti or Rushti. That's the Swiss potato dish, but that's also the name of the kit manufacturer. Yeah, guys, what did you think of AG2R La Mondiale?
I love it. I've loved it since it first came out, whatever, 3 or 4 years ago. It isn't different. I don't know why they need a press release for this, but it's the same thing. But I love it. I love the brown bibs. I mean, I think they're those clowns over at GCN were chirping the brown bibs or something when it first came out. But I think it's a great look. I mean, you see Panormal's doing brown bibs, Sportsville doing brown bibs. They're all doing it. It's a great look. I like the white and the bold lettering, the aggressive. I've actually thought this has been one of the better kits in the Peloton for the last few years. I think if we had this podcast a few years ago, there'd be no need to talk about it right now. But I'm glad, even though it's a redundant kit, we could bring it up. I think it's one of the best, and I love it. And your guys' comments are probably useless.
Well, I agree. Is that a useless comment?
Oh,
No,
sorry,
I guess it is.
I was so expecting the brown bibs. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. I'm with you. This has been one of my favorite World Tour kits for the last couple of years. It's great. I think it really stands out too, from a purely functional perspective of showing off your sponsors. It stands out whenever you're watching races on TV. It pops. It's like the most legible sponsor or sorry, team name I think in the entire Peloton. I'm into the brown bibs. I'm into the whole thing, and nice white jersey. Yeah, fully into it.
Yeah, I would love to disagree with you guys for just general interest. I think the podcast would be a little bit better if I disagreed, but I can't. The brown bibs, I agree, they were ahead of the game on this. Universal Colors, Panama Studios, everybody has brown bibs. These guys were like 3 years early on the brown bib trend, and it's not a disgusting brown. It's almost like if you let black bibs in the sun for too long, they would kind of fade a little bit, and that's what they look like. Yeah, I think it's a great kit. I don't think it's as good as the Trek kit personally. I find the Trek kit is somehow cleaner. I love, again, that pink jersey is amazing. I don't think Agedoza would do pink, but no, it's I'm gonna give this an 8 or a 9 out of 10. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a 10. I don't know if there are any 10s. I don't even if I agree with the Trek being 10, but yeah, 9.5. This has been great for a long time. And again, these sponsors are all about recognition. You get the breakaways, and they say they're just out to get their sponsor stuff. And half the time, you're like, I don't know what the hell's on this jersey. But this, you're right. You see it. I mean, it's it's a popular team, but you see, you can read it so easily, so well. You can spot it. It's really well done.
They don't have great riders on this team, though. They used to have Romain Bardet, but he moved to the Dutch team. So I
Ben
think
O'Connor, who's he had decent performance in the Tour last year. He's pretty young. I mean, I'm not saying he's gonna come up and take the Tour, but maybe we've got some younger riders on the come up, but we'll see.
Okay, so the next kit that we're going to talk about in the UCI World Tour is the Movistar kit, which, funny enough, we actually recorded before the kit came out that La Passione, which is one of the brands that we like here on this podcast, was going to be the kit maker for Movistar. And we were discussing it on the podcast. We actually re-recorded this now that they came out with the kit, but we had predicted that it would just be a big old Movistar kit with the giant M on it and a La Passione logo. And that's exactly what La Passione delivered for Movistar. So, guys, what did you think about the new Movistar kit?
I love it and absolutely hate it. The Movistar logo is so ugly and just awkward and everything that it ruins it. But I'm not I can't Photoshop, so I couldn't do a Photoshop of it. But I have a good visual presence. So if you visualize the jersey without the Movistar blob M and just sort of had it on its own, right? The blue's a nice color, sort of simple lines. The cut is beautiful. The length of the arms, the this kind of low V collar cut and stuff like that. It actually is really nice. It's just so dominated by the worst logo in pro cycling. I mean, I'm running through my head to think if there's anything worse, but I really can't. That it ruins it. So it's nice if it was if they were selling this is a La Passione, just jersey without that, and there's a couple more stripes. People would be like, oh, this is a great jersey. But it's so bad. The logo's so bad that I will say it's bad, but it's also good.
I'm pretty indifferent about it. I do think it's hilarious that it is exactly what we all thought it would be. I do want to point out that there are some similarities to a Team Sky kit when they were still with Castelli. Might have been their first year when Castelli came on after Rafa, but that Team Sky kit was obviously black, but it had these white horizontal lines across it similar to how the Movistar jersey has these like light blue lines across. So I feel like I should acknowledge that. I mostly agree with you, Tony. If you took off the Movistar logo, it would look pretty good. Like, look at Annemiek van Vleuten with her, former world champ stripes on the sleeves. Looks pretty good. I mean, also just looking through the press photos of it. The only other thing I would say to Alejandro Valverde: shave your head. You're bald. Give up. It's like, as a person who shaves his head because I've gone bald, you just got to give it up, man. It's sad. I feel bad for you. Give it up like you should give up being a professional.
The logo's awful. I agree with Tony. I don't like the horizontal stripes personally. I find it makes the kit look cheap. So what I would do is I would remove the logo. I would remove the horizontal stripe. I would remove all the sponsors, and I just have a solid navy kit with maybe La Passione on it. I think that would be perfect. But I think as it stands right now, it's terrible. Question for you guys: is the Movistar logo uglier than the Castelli logo?
Yes, like 100%. 100%. Like there's something so awkward about the Movistar because like it's supposed to be an M, but it's like it's trying to be this weird fluent. I don't even know what Movistar is.
I think it's a cable provider.
To be honest, like I almost barely ever look up what these companies are, like unless they're like super obvious and I can already tell.
I think it's a mobile phone slash cable. It's a
Oh, yeah, maybe it's
telecom
that.
company.
But I just want to like get away from just like the pure sort of printing and graphics. Like, can you guys at least appreciate the cut of this jersey, like that neckline and the length of the sleeves and the way it fits the body? Like, can we like get away from just purely the the print on it? Like, that's a really nice cut jersey, especially because we talked about Ineos and some of the sort of photos that were shared of like how poorly fitting the bio racer was compared to showing sort of like this show. Like La Passion is limited in their design because they have to show sponsors, but what they're able to control in terms of their technology and their cut and stuff, they did a fabulous job. So I think we still have to give a lot of shout outs to one of our top fives.
The shoes of old man Valverde are white, but his socks are navy. So that's in the Canal. From my perspective, the socks should be white.
I was just going to say a big win is that it doesn't say worth the effort anywhere. Pretty happy La Passion is maybe dialing back that out of their branding, TBD, but
I mean, I don't think that kit is worth the effort at all. I just remove all the sponsors, remove the horizontal lines, remove the logo, keep it navy, keep it real simple, and Movistar, here, off you go.
That's a question for you guys. If you were a billionaire and could get your own team and you didn't require sort of like outside sponsorship, you were just, you just had Elon Musk money, you're independently wealthy, you didn't need to fund it. Would you make your pro team wear just a solid colored kit?
Isn't that Tinkoff?
No, Tinkoff. I mean, he still had sponsors and it was very ugly, his kit. But I'm saying like you don't have to worry.
But he had the money. He could have done what you're suggesting.
Yeah, but I mean, he didn't. But I'm saying like if you did have the money and you're just like, I'm not even looking for sponsors. This is purely a passion project. I don't care about any profit. I'll put my like 30 million euros a year into it and just not get anything but the fun of owning it out. I would just have I might even go like a full solid black, like murdered out team, solid black bikes, everything black.
I'd call it Team Panorama Studios, and the whole team be decked out in Panorama Studios and be riding standard bikes. That's what we'd be doing.
I think I would probably do what Alex was saying he'd do to the Movistar kit. I would just have like a solid navy kit. I like navy's a good color. My bike is navy, as our listeners might have seen on our Instagram. So, and then like, a big picture of my face.
So you want to make it the ugliest kit in the peloton.
Okay, so moving on to our next segment. So as I mentioned in the intro, this is our last episode of 2021. So we thought we would do a bit of a 2021 recap from a cycling fashion week perspective. So looking at some of the releases, some of the trends that we spotted in the last few years, and discussing the ones that were the most meaningful to us. So 2021 recap, 2021 Retrospective, as I like to call it. That sounds a lot more Euro than a simple recap. So let's call it a 2021 Retrospective, starting with the big trends that we noticed this year in the world of cycling style and fashion. And why don't we start with Warren here?
It's something we've talked about on the podcast a few times, and I've just noticed that, as we all know, there's been lots of new cyclists in the last year or two, And for some reason, a lot of them, road cyclists, are wearing visor helmets. I feel like I need to caveat, it's great people are getting the cycling, no problem with that, but I don't know where they're buying their bikes, where these salesmen are selling them visor helmets to go with their relatively expensive road bike. Half these people are also wearing like Panormal, so they're spending like $500 on a kit, and then they're spending $80 on like a Giro helmet with a visor on it or something that's a mountain bike helmet. And they're new to cycling. Maybe they don't know, that they haven't found the podcast yet. Or they haven't listened to that episode. I just don't get it. Like, there's cheap road helmets too, and I just don't know how you look at those helmets and not think they look ridiculous. Like, they look like a mountain bike helmet. Even if I didn't bike, I think I would know it was a mountain bike helmet. So that's a trend I've noticed this year, especially, even more so than 2020. I find myself just assuming that person's a new cyclist, which may be a bit of an unfair assumption, but is generally true. And the only other thing I would say is these salespeople at these bike shops are foolish, because if somebody really wants a visor to like block out the sun, sell them a road helmet and a cycling cap. There's two sales. It's just good business.
Actually, I'd sell them expensive sunglasses instead
Or
of a
that.
cycling cap, because as you'll remember, our great friend of the podcast, Prempton, says do not wear a cycling cap under your helmet, because typically people flip the visor. It tends to push the helmet backwards, and if you have a head-on impact, that's no good for your brain. Shout out to our man Prempton. So I would say buy some expensive sunglasses instead.
Definitely. So I think actually, obviously, complete agreement with Warren. I don't think there's any argument here. I think I might have been the one who threw in the Canal. I'm not sure. Maybe Warren did, but Boston Helmet. But I want to think of us not just as top end journalists, but also as sort of instructors and helpers in the world. And so I think this is actually a good opportunity, because as far as I understand, especially on the lower end helmets, I'm not talking about like the really high end mountain bike ones, all of those visors are removable. And I've seen some helmets that look kind of shitty with a visor, and then you pop it off out of the little holes and it looks great. So I think for our listeners, we'll put together a how-to video on how to remove your visor and then throw it in the canal. Just the visor, because we want you to be safe with the helmet, but then throw it in the canal. Even if you right now, if you're there looking at your helmet that you bought and you're thinking, man, I wish I didn't have a visor, I got good news for you. Go to the helmet. I guarantee you can pop that visor off and it will start to look more like a road bike helmet. So there's a lot, Warren's right, but there's a lot of positivity here, people.
Okay, so my trend that I spotted this year in the world of cycling that I think was present in 2020, but it really ramped up in 2021, is I noticed pro cyclist fascination with obscenely expensive mechanical watches, mostly made by the brand called Richard Mille, or Richard Mill for all you English speakers out there. So a couple of things there. I think it really started with probably Julien Alaphilippe of the Koenig Quick Step, who started winning races while wearing something like $500,000 watch, which I think apparently is made out of carbon and rubber. Anyway, he has that sort of blue bracelet on the watch. And apparently that's the hilarious part, is it's also a watch that has an odometer function that helps you track your mileage as a cyclist during the year. So as if we needed that with all the different tech that we have right now. But anyway, so started wearing that. Mark Cavendish as well wore one at the Tour de France this year, where he matched Eddie Merckx's record for the greatest number of Tour stage wins. Anyway, that's something I really noticed this year. It was around over the previous years, but it really accelerated this year. I don't know if it's as a function of watch manufacturers, so kind of Swiss expensive watch manufacturers wanting to market to cyclists overall, because cyclists tend to be a higher income group, probably a lot of crossover between expensive bike buyers and expensive watch wearers. But anyway, that's something I really noticed this year on the Pro Tour, guys wearing ridiculously expensive watches. I like it in general. I like the idea of it. Would I wear a $500,000 watch on a bike? Probably not. I think I would wear something a little more robust or something a little less expensive. So if I crash or something happens, I don't care quite as much, but I'm also not as rich as these guys.
It's a wonderful trend. I think that, to give another shout out to our good friend, the pod Prempted. We discussed in that we all wear, Alex Prempted and I all wear mechanical watches while riding, mostly for style. Sometimes I actually won't bring a computer with me, and I'll use it just to kind of track the time and where I'm at. But I think in general, it's a great look. If I had Richard Mille money, I would definitely be wearing one while riding. And even if I crashed it, I assume there's some sort of, replacement guarantee. And if not, a scratched up Richard Mille that someone's saying, well, what the hell happened to your $500,000 watch? Wow, I crashed it. I crashed it in my local parking lot crit Tuesday night crit, I think it's a flex, to be honest. You're saying like, look at this. I'm a shit cyclist, but I got a $500,000 watch on my wrist.
Actually reminds me, I think 2 years ago, so I think the year before the pandemic, so 2019, there's this gravel ride in the eastern townships of Quebec called Les 100 à Bessette. So basically, Lynn Bessette, the former Canadian pro, I think she probably was a national champ. Anyway, she's one of the greatest female Canadian riders of all time. She was organizing a gravel ride there, beautiful gravel ride, held in early October, so sort of peak fall colors there. So I did that ride a few years ago, and at the end, there's an area with like beer and food at the end. And I sat down, talked to a few people, and the guy that I was sitting across me had just done this like pretty muddy, pretty messy gravel ride while wearing an Omega Speedmaster watch, which is actually kind of a delicate watch. Like you don't want to bang around an Omega Speedmaster, let alone get it wet. Guy was just riding kind of muddy, wet gravel with an Omega Speedmaster. So hey, people do that. All right, Tony, what was your trend in 2022 that you spotted?
So this one, this is a negative. I mean, some people might see this as a positive, but I see this as a bit of a negative, and it's a bit about styles. I've noticed that when out on the road, everyone seems to be wearing a kind of all, whatever brand they've purchased or that kit is, all of it matching. So say, Panorama, they have a cap on, they have the bibs, they have the jersey, they have the jacket, they have the socks. It's all matching together. It's all part of one sort of, collection, and they're all kind of going into it. And I think a lot of people might look at this and think, well, that's good, right? Like I'm keeping it all together. But I actually think it's sort of a weak point. It shows a weakness in your style. You can really appreciate a cyclist's ability to sort of put together a nice kit is when they take different brands, when they have, it's a MAP jersey, it's Albion bibs, it's, Panorama gilet, and they put together and it just all kind of works. Like it's as cohesive as if you're sort of buying this collection off a rack. And that's like a certain skill. Warden and I have a good friend that we ride with. He's probably the most stylish person outside of cycling on the bike. And he does it. He rolls up on a thing and it's every single different brand that you can think of. He's got a Universal Colors hat on, Map this, Rafa that, and it just looks impeccable. It looks incredible. He's figured out a way to make sure the colors all go, everything goes together. And I find it just so much more impressive than someone going in, dropping all the money on kind of one collection. I don't know, maybe it's everyone wants to look like an ambassador, but I'd like to see people mixing and matching brands and sort of fitting that style, showing a little more uniqueness in their style, so that's a trend I noticed. And I kind of hope goes away. People a little more confident in what they wear.
I want to note that we've had a couple requests from listeners via DMs to our Instagram, and I think even email to like cover this topic of mixing and matching brands, like yay or nay. And I agree with you, Tony. Like our friend Sean, who you mentioned, who he dresses impeccably. I don't even know how he does it sometimes. He just shows up. I'm like, wow, that really works. And it's just like not only a brand combination, but even a color combination I might not even think of. I'm all for mixing matching kit. I definitely do it sometimes. Half the time it's because, certain stuff's in the laundry.
It is a skill though to mix and match because it can go real wrong. I think staying with the same brand is kind of the safe choice. Stuff was designed to go together most of the time. So if you're a new cycling fashion aficionado, maybe keep it simple, stay with the same brand. Guy like, Sean that you mentioned, he's an expert cycling fashion guy. He really knows what he's doing. So yes, in this case, you can go ahead, but it requires a certain level of skill in order to be able to properly pull it off.
That's what we're here for.
Okay, all right. So the next part of our 2021 retrospective, we are going to look at some of our favorite releases from 2021 from a variety of brands that we follow. And why don't we start with Warren?
I'll go quickly because people are probably almost expecting one of us to say this, and we've talked about it a lot. But for me, my favorite kit release this year is the Albion Fall Winter collection, which we did talk about in detail a couple episodes ago, and then we interviewed him last episode. So we talked about it a lot. I just really like the color palette. A lot of interesting items in there beyond just jersey and bib tights and blah blah blah. It's great stuff.
All right, my favorite release of the year is it's actually not a kit release, it's a bike release, and it's from a brand I followed for a little bit of time. So I'm a steel bicycle guy. I love the clean look of kind of smaller steel tubes with a classic geometry with a pretty level top tube. It's actually what I own. For what it's worth, I posted my bike on Instagram recently, so go back and have a look if you haven't seen it. So you'll see the type of bike that I'm into, but it's from a brand I've been following for a little bit of time. They're a German brand. They're called Standard, or I'm guessing in German, Standard. They make beautiful bikes. The geometry is perfect. Very, very classic style, but they make them in a modern way. They've got internal cable routing, disc brakes. Seems like a reasonably aggressive geometry overall. Anyhow, they released their, I think it's their flagship steel modeled. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation because German is probably the one European language that I don't speak. It is called the Kreissäge. That is the name of the bicycle. They make it in 3 colors. They have kind of funny color names. So lead out yellow, Belgian blue, and paceline peach. The paceline peach, for what it's worth, is incredible. As the name suggests, it's a peach color. There's white parts on the bike. The Standard logo is written in a sort of purple, kind of dark blue-ish. They've got DT Swiss wheels on them. I think, unfortunately, that it seems like their group set of choice is SRAM, but just the geometry of these bicycles and the color choices, the color combinations that they make available to the buyers are just incredible. Would love to test ride one at some point, but it is honestly, among all the steel frame makers that I follow around the world, I find that stand up, they, top of the line, really. What they make seems incredible. Kind of makes me want to own one, actually.
Yeah, they're beautiful bikes. I think I discovered the brand not long after I bought my cross bike, which is a Ritchie Swiss Cross, so a steel cross bike. And I remember stumbling upon Standard and being just wishing maybe I had found them a bit earlier, because I might have grabbed one of their kind of off-road gravel frames to Jimmy rig that as my cross bike. Maybe I will one day. Who knows?
Don't get me wrong; they're probably obscenely
They are
expensive.
extremely expensive for what they
I
are.
think they're probably $1 million each.
Yeah.
Got to probably import them from Germany as well, pay an obscene amount of duties as well. This is probably a major flex to own that bike. All right, Tony, what's your release that you liked this year?
So mine is one that we also spoke about now quite a few episodes ago. That is the British company Romance, who teamed up with the French artist Para to create a sort of a mini series of bibs, gilets, and jerseys and caps. Many years ago, I came across a very nice photo. Probably was Instagram, maybe Tumblr, even that long ago. Of a very nice looking unstructured 6-panel hat with a sort of abstract, maybe impressionist sort of bike on it. And it happened to be designed by the artist designer Para. And I went thinking I must own this hat. I'll go buy it. I went to the website and it was sold out. And so, similar to the Romance Para kit, this is exclusive stuff. It's beautiful and it gets sold out. So not only do I, love the design, love the designers, love the sort of bold take on cycling, I love the exclusivity of it all. That yes, you want it. You may even have the money to buy it, but you probably can't get it. And that's really good.
Okay, so next part of the 2021 retrospective, we're each going to talk about our favorite piece of kit that we bought this year. Not necessarily a favorite piece of kit, could be a favorite accessory, or hell, it could even be a bike. But Warren, what was it for you?
I recently bought a winter jacket from the brand Velocio. I actually don't know how you say it. I've heard Velocio. I think it's Velocio. I don't know. Anyway, it's a brand we haven't really talked much on this podcast, and we've actually gotten some messages from listeners asking why we haven't or that we should talk about it. And that wasn't why I bought this. I needed a winter jacket. Well, I needed a new winter jacket, and I especially wanted one that doesn't make you feel like, you're in a boil bag or in a sauna. And I'd heard some good things about the Velocio winter jacket. I've ridden it a few times. I think we've mentioned winter came a bit early in Canada. And yeah, it's been really good. When I got it, I was a little worried at how thin it seemed, but once I threw it on, it actually, once you get moving, it's surprisingly warm. I think it's windproof and relatively water resistant. And yeah, you can wear it with just a base layer under it because it's got 3 pockets in the back like a jersey. But I've also worn it on some colder days here, like below zero, with like a base layer thermal and the jacket. I've been plenty comfortable, and yeah, and I'm not boiling and a sweating mess. Probably the best piece of kit I've picked up all year.
All right, so for me, there's two things I want to talk about. So the first one, it's actually not a piece of kit; it's more of an accessory. I picked up early this year. I picked up a Silca Impero frame pump, a black Silca Impero frame pump to go on my black steel Marinoni road bicycle, and I have been enjoying this pump very much. It's a very expensive pump compared to any sort of like pocket pumps that you might be riding with in case you have a flat to repair. But this one is really the next level of pumps. It's almost as good as a pump that you would that you would have in your garage and that you would step on to put air in your tires. But mostly it just looks sick on a steel bicycle. Frame pumps look amazing on steel bicycles. Not so sure about how they look on carbon frame bikes. Probably wouldn't ride with one if I were a carbon guy, but as a steel bike owner, I think you absolutely need a frame pump, and it has to be the same color as the color of your top tube. It looks amazing. I have been really loving that pump. The other product that I bought this year that I've been really enjoying is my white on white on white Shimano RC7 road shoes. As I said, they're white, and I'm team white shoes only. Tony, what do you got?
I did actually technically buy my bike this year, so I could give kind of a shout out to the Marinoni, but it's been posted other places, and I kind of realized I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm afraid other people are going to buy it. Not mine, obviously specifically, but buy the model, and I don't need that many people riding around with the Marinoni. Anyways, and so I'm going to give kind of to some accessories I got that I think have been great. First is a very recent purchase, a Hanukkah present from my wife. The finger cross headband. I have a lot of issue with being very, very cold when I leave the house for a sort of a wintry fall ride and getting very warm rather quickly. I've either kind of only had a cycling cap or my Rafa winter cap, and I leave with the Rafa winter cap in about 20K in. I feel like I need to take it off or push the ears up or something. So this has been it's a nice design. It's very simple. I just have the black one, but it's great. It's practical to kind of leave warm early and then be able to sort of pop it off. And my second, which is probably, it's hard to say against your dream bike, but really great purchase was my Cask Mojito 3. I'm Cask all the way, and it's partly because I was riding with a POC for a couple years, and it just never fit me right. It would always sort of ride up, and it was kind of bought it when POC was really getting trendy, and I wanted to sort of be part of it, and I got the Cask at the sort of start of the summer, and the fit, the comfort of it, the sort of adjustability of it. Cask is a really great helmet.
Headbands, just back to the headband though. Headbands are great. I have a Rafa one that I actually quite like. The fingers crossed one looks great, actually.
At the risk of making this podcast sound too Canadian, I also have a fingers crossed merino headband, and it's pretty good.
Is fingers crossed Canadian?
No, I just mean we're talking about a lot of winter gear.
Well, I mean,
our European correspondent Harry says that old Spanish guys start wearing headbands when it's 18 degrees. So I don't think we're the only ones out there buying headbands. Okay, moving on to our next segment, Into the Canal, where we toss something that we absolutely hate from the world of cycling into the Canal. This is our last into the Canal of the year, so we'll make it a good one. Tony, what are you throwing in the Canal? Actually, last episode, Tony was positive. Tony, everything was good in the world of cycling. So are we still in that mood, Tony, or have things changed?
No, peak cycling is over. We're on the downslide now. But this week, I'm throwing something I would say is controversial. People will get upset with me. Zwift. I am throwing the cycling training video game avatar program Zwift into the Canal.
Tell us why.
I'm going to tell you why. I mean, maybe, I'm not every single cyclist in the world does this, but I wake up in the morning and I unfortunately turn to my phone to look at stuff on the phone, Instagram, various things. And then I get a coffee and I sit down and I sit in front of a computer and I sit for 7 or 8 hours typing away, staring at a computer. And then I make my dinner. And now that my kitchen table is also my office, I sit in front of the TV and watch an episode of Below Deck. I started riding with Wahoo System. There's not a sponsor for them, so Trainer Road or any of the other kind of things that aren't Zwift. And I just started doing the videos without any video, like just a blank screen, and it's just that. And I put on some music, and it just gave me an incredible sense of sort of disconnecting and sort of enjoying the training of the bike. And I sort of just realized, like, this whole thing, it's too boring. If I don't look at my too long socked avatar moving on the thing, I can't stay on for an hour. Well, it sucks both ways. And maybe there's too much screen time. There's too much this. So I think we got to disconnect, throw your Zwift in the Canal. Training programs are great. I don't think you should ever get rid of that, but I just like the idea of sort of nothingness, just you and some bars of power, just pushing out the big watts, your favorite song, I put on a great Feist album or something and just really go at it. And I just don't think that, I think that Zwift should go in the Canal and we should all get rid of it.
Feist is not exactly music to push big watts.
Unfortunately, I have a very odd taste in sport music, and I actually don't listen to highly pumped up music when I work out. I like a very soft, sort of romantic, a little bit sad. Like, it puts me in sort of a zone of this is painful, and then I can the music can be painful with me. Like, I can emotionally be painful, so the physical doesn't hurt as bad. Try it out, everybody. Feist.
I have a bit of a reputation for having kind of sad boy music on party playlists. So to be honest, my training playlist is probably also kind of depressing.
So I do actually want to put a small caveat on the Zwift thing. I'm talking more specifically about Zwift training. I do think that Zwift racing and even group rides, which I haven't loved, but we've had some good cycling fashion week group rides on the Discord and stuff. Very private Discord, of course. So I'm not completely against that if you're saying, I've got a group ride. But yeah, if you're training, turn off your screens, zone out a little bit, enjoy you and the bike, be like a fixed gear guy, one with the bike and all that stuff, right? Have your imaginary spacers and your sticker that says this machine kills fascism and stuff, and just be one with the bike for an hour.
I'm on Zwift, but I actually don't really look at the screen. I don't know. I've just out of habit, I guess I've been on Zwift. I don't really look at what my guy on the screen is doing. I'll just look at the Zwift companion app, how many watts I'm pushing, usually in the 400 range.
The thing is, with your natural ability, I think that you usually hold around an FTP of 360, even with years off the bike. So I don't know why you need training at all. You could stop riding, become a donut, a Tim Hortons, Tim Beeb's donut reviewer for 2 years, come back and you still be crushing all of us.
You're the only person whose FTP went up with a newborn.
That's right. And what I need in reality is not working out. It's Dr. Michele Ferrari. That is really what I need to get to the next level. Okay. All right. So keeping things moving along here. So I'm going to throw the Rapha Festive 500 in the Canal. So happy Hanukkah to all our listeners. Merry Christmas to all those who celebrate. It's about to happen. 'Tis the season. Rapha is about to blast your Instagram feeds with the Festive 500. So for those new cyclists who don't know what that is, the cycling kit brand Rapha, they've been pushing this thing called the Festive 500, where they want you to ride 500. Is it miles or kilometers?
kilometers.
So 500 kilometers between Christmas and New Year's, basically. So from the 25th
Christmas Eve to New Year's Eve.
Christmas Eve to New Year's. So from the 24th to the 31st, they want you to clock in 500 kilometers, and then it's this unbearable thing that's going to happen on your Instagram feed where people are going to hashtag the festive 500. They'll show you their odometer, where they are out of 500. So today I'm 92 out of 500, 166 out of 500. It'll go on for the week. It'll be unbearable. People will post it on Instagram. People will post it on Strava. And a couple of things here, lots to unpack. But first of all, no one cares about your mileage. And that's true between Christmas and New Year's. It's true in the winter. It's true in the spring. It's true in the summer. This is like your fantasy football team. No one cares about it. We don't want to know how much mileage you did because it's irrelevant. Like no one really gives a fuck. The only times I want to know how long you rode on a ride is if I was with you on that ride. And if I wasn't, then I don't really care. The other thing about the festive 500 is, people are kind of pushing themselves to do these 500 kilometers in what is usually pretty miserable weather overall between Christmas and New Year's, at least in Canada. It's kind of that part of the winter where, some years you'll get like really nice kind of powdery white snow. But at that point, I'd rather be skiing, to be honest with you, or maybe doing a quick kind of Zwift HIIT workout on in the morning of Christmas Eve, just so I can eat more turkey. But it's just pretty miserable usually, and a lot of times like you'll have this kind of slushy, kind of wet, disgusting weather when people could be spending time with their children, spending time with their significant others. And so instead they're doing random useless mileage for the gram, which doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, as somebody who, when I was a slightly younger man, sincerely, I don't know if I ever actually have finished the festive 500 because I usually get distracted by how terrible the weather is and that I don't want to ride outside. Because without fail, I think every year I've tried to do it, there's been a major snowstorm. And there's one year Tony and I jokingly, but I think actually sincerely tried to do it on our cross bikes by riding in the snow. And I think like our first or second ride, we rode 30K and it took well over 2 hours, probably 3 hours because of how slow we were going. And it was just like, what's the point? Because if we rode 500K in that, we would, be able to take some gritty black and white photos to submit to Rafa to get an iron-on patch. Like, nah.
Which also, iron-on patches are in the canal. Don't iron on patches on anything. You aren't a 13-year-old ska punk from 1997. Don't just take those patches, put them in a drawer somewhere. Someone asked for them, but I don't want to ever see your mech knapsack with a bunch of iron-on Rafa patches or something like that. Like you're a Boy Scout. Please, no.
So festive 500 in the canal. This is another thing that Warren brought up is, it's usually pretty miserable, the weather. There is a thing though, like snow riding in the month of March is cool, but snow riding in the month of December, I just don't want to hear about it. It's very different because come March, like you're so desperate to go outside, and I think you would do it. But in December, it's like I can stay by the fireplace, watch my daughter play with her toys, and like I don't know, I don't want to be out there doing the festive 500.
I don't know. I mean, one, I don't have a kid to watch play in front of the fireplace, but two,
actually not near the fireplace, just for the parents out there listening to you got to watch them. But just wanted to point that out.
I think taking your cross bike out, into some fresh snow, it can be pretty fun winter training. Just not trying to do 500 kilometers of it in 1 week.
Also, the thing is, on the flip side, like it doesn't mean shit in the Southern Hemisphere, right? So it's like it's kind of stupid and hard in the Northern Hemisphere because you're like, oh, it's cold and it's Christmas time. So but then the Southern Hemisphere, where it's summer, like a 508 days and 500K where you're on vacation is just a normal vacation week for most people in the summer, right? Like that's the only time I would get to 500Ks in about a week is if I was on vacation. It's stupid in the Northern Hemisphere and not hard in the Southern Hemisphere, meaningless in the Southern Hemisphere.
It is true that you get these blokes from Straya that are out there riding like by the beach, and it's their vacations, their annual vacation, it's kind of summer vacation for them, and it's a totally unremarkable achievement. Also in the Canal, people that do the Festive 500 but using their Zwift mileage.
Oh, that doesn't
Also in the
count.
Canal.
That doesn't
Also
count.
in the Canal.
Doesn't count.
Okay, moving on. Warren, what do you got?
It kind of relates to something we've been talking about for a while, and I think I've uncovered more evidence to back up our conspiracy theory we talked about recently, which is that big gravel, the industrial gravel complex that is pushing graveling cycling on road cyclists, that it's really just a big mountain bike that's behind it all. And I think probably the best evidence for this nowadays, or that's like all the rage for both road cyclists and gravel cyclists, is tubeless. That is what I'm throwing in the Canal, is tubeless tires setups, because it's fucking terrible. Like, I don't think many people would argue that tubeless is bad and tricky on road, and it often doesn't hold a seal because the pressure's too high. Full disclosure, I tried making my road bike tubeless, I think last season, and I had nothing but endless issues. I had one puncture that sealed, and the rest of the time, I had one too big and the tire blew up. I got covered in sealant. It like got all over my rim. It was terrible. I had a really hard time getting a tube in. But I also know people that swear it's like, okay, no, you don't do it on road, but it's good for gravel and cross. It's like, no, it's not. There's nothing wrong with tubes. Never had enough issues with tubes to warrant the disaster that tubeless setups can lead to, both in terms of a mess or having to put a tube in anyway, but then you're covered in pink guck and it's really sticky. And I just don't buy it. There was a heated debate in one of the cycling chat groups I'm a part of today, and it was about tubeless, and it just made me reinforce my beliefs that I just don't believe that it is that much better than tubes. And people listening are probably like, what does this have to do with cycling fashion? Well, when your tubeless setup blows up and sprays gunk all over your bike looks like shit. So that's how it relates to cycling fashion, and that's why I'm throwing tubeless in the Canal. I don't buy it. It's another thing they're pushing on us to buy more shit, buy different proprietary setups, and then 10 years from now they'll be like, oh, we invented these really even better, thinner latex tubes. Let's go back to tubes now. That's how it's happening. It's just big mountain bike. Tubeless probably works on mountain bikes. I don't know. I'm not a mountain biker. I've heard it's good, but now they want you to do it on your gravel bikes, and it's just big mountain bike creeping into gravel, into the road cycling. You could probably tell I'm getting really worked up. I really don't like tubeless. This is the last thing I'll say. I race cross, and I know some people who race cross go to tubeless and get really low PSI. The only thing I can say that is check your ego. You're racing amateur cross. The difference between, say, 16 PSI and 20 PSI, it's not going to make or break your wide angle podium.
I mean, I love the rant. It was, it was a perfect rant, and I think that we're just building our case for big gravel being a front for big mountain bike, because I have no interest in tubeless. I've looked at when it kind of came out, I looked at your setup and I was like, I am way too lazy with anything bike related to want to start putting sealants in. And I live in an apartment where I do all my sort of stuff in my living room. Like this, I'm not dealing with any of this crap. As far as the function of it, you talk about the low tire pressure, I don't know, whatever. But like, this is exactly what we're talking about with the big mountain bike. So when I was in my early teens, I raced this was the 90s. I raced, in Ontario cross country mountain bikes. So they were, hardtail mountain bikes. And I would say I got flats quite often. I did, right? Like the type of terrain you're doing, with lots of rocks and sort of, there wasn't tubeless then, but I could sort of see the argument in mountain bike for it. But I've ridden a lot of gravel. I haven't really ridden any racing cross, but that type of terrain was sort of, simple single track. I may have had 3 flats in the last 5 years. One of the flats I got ripped the side of my tire open on a gravel ride. And so even if I had tubeless, I would have had to replace it with a tube anyways, because it wouldn't have sealed that size of the hole. So the whole thing is a big scam. It's big mountain bike. It's like, get over yourselves, people. Stop doing this. Just go to tubes. It's great. Way to go, Warren.
I agree. I think we keep bringing to the world more evidence that big mountain bike continues to pull the strings of the gravel industrial complex, which in turn pulls the strings of the road industrial complex as well, which I think is very concerning for us as citizens. Okay, so moving on to our next segment that we have neglected over the last few weeks due to all the interviews that we've had. We just couldn't really fit it into the episodes. We rate your bike for free. So listeners send us pictures, a description of their bike at cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com, or you can also send us a DM on Instagram at cyclingfashionweek. A couple pics of your bike, description of your bike, what's the story behind it. We'll read it on the podcast, and we will review your bike and give you constructive criticism so you can make your bike look better for free. So let me take this one. So this one comes to us from Vince. Vince is originally from Toronto, but moved to New York City 3 years ago. So Vince sends us a picture of his bike. He says, "Can I submit this for Rate My Bike? LOL." And then so we answered, "Yeah, of course, bro, but you got to tell us a little bit more than that." So he says, "For sure." The frame is a Whitsun titanium frame. They're from Lithuania, so never heard of that before, but it looks great. I'll describe it a little bit later. So Whitsun titanium frame from Lithuania. The group set is Campagnolo Chorus 11 speed. And he's got a Campagnola Bora 1 wheel set. So let me describe the bike a little bit. So as he says, it's a titanium bike. So it's that classic titanium frame color. It hasn't been painted. So it's got that beautiful kind of gray, shiny. This one interesting. It could be just the reflection of the floor of where he took the picture, but there's like bronze accents in there as well. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm a huge fan of titanium frames as well. He's got a black fork, which is matte black. It appears to be carbon. So this is a rim brake. Shout out to Vince. Congratulations. Rims just look amazing. Most of the time, they pretty terrible at braking in the rain, but they, as far as aesthetics, they look really good. So he's got these nice bottle cages as well. They seem to be titanium as well. Pretty classic shape of bottle cages. He's got internal cable routing on that bike. So his bar tape also interestingly is sort of a gray bar tape, but there's a bit of purple on it, although that may just be the use of him grabbing the bar tape. But anyway, he's got a bit of purple on there. The Campagnolo wheels look great. It seems like there may be a 40 millimeter depth, I'm going to say. So sort of middle of the range depth in terms of rim depth. So yeah, I mentioned his stem is actually pretty slammed. I'm going to say it looks, I think it's a slam stem. He doesn't really have any spacers on there, or maybe a tiny spacer. So kudos to Vince for that. And I will say though, his seat post is actually very low on this bike. So he's got a drop from the seat post to the stem and the cockpit, but there's not a whole lot of seat posts on that bike there. And it seems like his seat is brought forward as much as is humanly possible on that bicycle. So it's possible that our guy Vince got this bike on the secondhand market. The frame might have been a little bit too big for him, but couldn't pass up this beautiful titanium frame. So kind of adjusted it or got it fitted. And really lowered the seat post and pushed the seat forward. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here. We'll put the pictures on our Instagram account at Cycling Fashion Week, and I'll let Warren and Tony kick off the discussion of that bike.
Really nice bike. My only main issues with it are the almost no exposed seat post, which, people's body proportions are different. Maybe he's got pretty short legs, but really long arms. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. It would be great if he could show a little more seat post. The other thing, you mentioned the bar tape. I think that is the purple in there is actually colored. It looks like Supercar's bar tape. I don't know. They got some weird color things going on that I'm never a fan of personally, with everything he's got going on there with the black fork, the really nice carbon wheels. Like I would just have pure black bar tape.
I agree. I'd probably go black bar tape as well, but I do think it looks nice here. And Yeah, interesting point on the Supakaz bar tape because they also have bottle cages that are made of titanium, and I think that's what he might be having here.
I think those are king cages. It looks like he has
Oh,
king
okay.
Yeah,
cages.
I have king cage, not the titanium, but they look very similar to mine. Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe it feels like a bit of a secondhand market type of bike with him sort of dealing with some of the sizing issues. And yeah, it would be ideal to have more seat posts exposed. And if there was a fully custom build, I think maybe who was doing his fit might have sold him a little the wrong way. But let's take that off the table and just sort of say it was a stock size and he got it. He's done a great job with all the little details. I agree. I don't like the Super Kaz tape personally. I don't like the color. I don't like the thing, but the bar ends on it are very nice. I don't know if that stock with the Super Kaz are nice, but the bar plugs are very sort of simple, nice. And then I like because he's a New Yorker now, and then they're walking here, so he put a nice little I think it's a crane bell, so when he's doing laps of Prospect Park to make sure that anyone in his way knows he's coming. So
That's a spur cycle, actually.
it's a spur cycle. Sorry, what did I say? A
So.
crane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spur cycle's more expensive, so it's better.
Okay, exactly. So yeah, I give this. There's a few knocks here, so I'll give it an 8.25.
So no, again, I think I'm the only one who mentioned the slammed stem here. Whenever we post a bike on Instagram like clockwork, our followers, you guys, the listeners, shout out to you. They come out, the Cycling Fashion Week army, they say that stem needs to be slammed. Stem needs to be slammed. That's always the first comment. And our guy Vince here, he came to us with a properly slammed stem. So congratulations, Vince. I think that'll win you a lot of points among our audience. So just on the company that makes these frames, so I was just checking it out. So Whitson Custom TI Cycles. Yeah, from Lithuania. There's a custom builder. Not even going to attempt to pronounce his name. Actually, I can't. It's not that hard. Vidmantas Zukauskas. Sorry. So it seems like an old guy making TI frames. Been doing it for a while. They're beautiful. I mean, they have some pictures of their frames on the website. Vitson logo's pretty big. That seems to be the trend actually in frame logos. But they're showing them, all custom TI frames with an Envy carbon fork. I think that looks amazing. Personally, I've always been a big fan of titanium. I do think I will own one at some point. It hasn't happened yet. Actually, really nice from Vince. Yeah, aside from the seat post issue, I don't know. I'm inclined to give this an 8.5 or a 9. This is really well done.
So I just have a quick question. So I by the look of the fork as well as sort of what Vitson's done with other stuff, it's probably an Envy fork that's being run there. But it looks like now it could be because I had an Envy fork on my older bike and it did have a sort of a matte black logo, which may not come up in the photo. But at this point, it looks like there's no logo on the Envy fork. And that brings me to a question. When you have something of the caliber of Envy, there's something very appreciative about sort of stealth and non-branding, but should you make sure that Envy logo is on there and visible if you have an Envy fork or High in Columbus, any of that kind of stuff? Should you make sure that the logo is on there or should you keep it sleek? What do we think? I would like to see the Envy logo on this.
I think a small logo would be optimal. I think there's the right balance between kind of flexing your Envy products with a giant logo on it and just being a little bit more stealth about it. But I do think you need an Envy logo on it. Just respect the product. Like, it's such a great brand. You need the logo.
I would disagree. I think I'd go for sleek, and the reason I would have an Envy fork is just to tell people I have an Envy fork. That's what I don't care about the ride quality, whatever performance. I just want to tell people I've got an Envy fork. Like fucking texting people, like letting everybody know, like ride past people, and I don't say hello. I say I've got an Envy fork, and that's it.
Have you guys noticed in Envy, like in anything Envy, the higher up you go in terms of the range, like the more expensive you get, the bigger the logo seems to get as well. Like I have the Envy Foundation 45 wheels on my Marinoni road bike, which is the entry level wheels of Envy, which is entry level Envy is pretty damn good. But the logo is actually on there, but it's quite small. And as you go up the range, like the Envy Gucci wheels, like for people who want to let people, like the Warren type of people who actually, Warren doesn't want the logo, but he wants people to know that he has Envy. So as you go up the range in terms of price and in terms of quality, like the Envy SES wheel range, like the SES 4.5, giant Envy logo on the wheels. So generally speaking, the size of the logo is positively correlated with the price you pay for the Envy product. All right, thanks Vince for submitting your bikes. So pretty high marks from the guys on the podcast. We'll post it on Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week, and hopefully our listeners will also provide some constructive criticism on your bike and help you make it better. Thank you again, Vince. Okay, that's a wrap. Cycling Fashion Week, last episode of 2021. Thanks a lot to all our listeners for having supported us throughout the year. This was our first year, kind of started this 4 or 5 months ago, and we've been amazed by the growth that we've had in our listeners and our audience. So this podcast would not be possible without you, the listeners. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks for your engagement. We really appreciate it. And we will definitely be coming back in early 2022 with more Cycling Fashion Week. Still lots of stuff to talk about. We actually have big plans for the podcast in 2022 as well. We hope to bring you more interviews with kit makers, pro cyclists, bike builders, anything you want, anything that deals with how you look on the bike. We plan on doing that in 2022, and we hope to have you along for the ride. Thanks, Warren. Thanks, Tony. Have a great holiday season. All of our listeners, please don't do the Rafa Festive 500, but do keep riding. Do enjoy yourselves on the bike. Stay safe, and we will see you at the beginning of 2022. Take care.